Cultivating Core Influence, Dr. Yosi Amram on spiritual intelligent leadership. Ever wonder what truly sets an exceptional leader apart? It's more than IQ or even emotional intelligence. Join us as we welcome Dr. Yosi Amram, who reveals the true inspiration emanates from within, sharing that spiritual intelligence, SI, a measurable capacity distinct from traditional intellect, can fundamentally elevate our impact. When we align with our deeper passions and integrity, it in turn builds unprecedented morale, engagement, and outstanding results. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Welcome. Let me share a little bit about the incredible guests that we have with us today. Dr. Yosi Amram is a clinical psychologist and former tech CEO whose personal quest for deeper fulfillment led him to pioneer groundbreaking research in spiritual intelligence. He guides leaders globally in cultivating this vital inner resource, empowering them to emanate profound purpose, create authentic connections, and drive exceptional results professionally and personally. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Yosi Amram. Welcome.
Thank you, April. I'm delighted to be here with you. Thanks for those kind words and inspiring intro.
You are so welcome. Now, this is an exciting interview because who doesn't need to add on spiritual intelligence alongside all of the other things, the IQ, the emotional intelligence? This is such a vital aspect, right? And I like to say, if we don't say that we're spiritual beings, it's like saying that you don't have skin, because it just is. It's a part of us. And so let's start talking about it. And why not bring that into every aspect of life, including, of course, business? So this is going to be a great conversation. Why don't we start by sharing a little bit more about yourself so the audience can get to know you more?
Okay, how many hours do we have? Okay, I'll try and keep it concise. So yeah, I was born and raised in Israel, a war-torn part of the world. At age 18, I was drafted into the military, despite being a pacifist and so on. I was a shy and introvert math and science kid, and fortunately it was a peaceful time, but to my surprise, I had this fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment and won all these leadership awards. But despite excelling at the command and control model of the military, it really chafed at my soul. And I resolved to someday build an organization that brings out the best in people, in each individual. And that kind of led me to come to the US and study engineering and business and ultimately become an entrepreneur. I was twice a founder and CEO of two companies I had the good fortune of taking public. During one of them, I overworked myself. I was working 70, 80 hours a week and got burnt out and hit what's called in spiritual circles a dark night of the soul. From a clinical standpoint, it was more of a clinical depression. When the internet came and our business was at a threat, and then I was facing a lot of internal and external pressure to succeed and raise tens of millions of dollars from the top venture capitalists and companies like Microsoft. But I persisted, and we turned the business around into an internet company and took it public, and it was a high-flying stock. But one day when I was trying to relax on a massage table, I relaxed so deeply that my ego dissolved, and I had a spiritual awakening experience, which actually threw me into a manic episode, which was very disorienting because it blew the circuits of my mind. And needless to say, that was very challenging to lead the company and the board and my team. So my board voted to put me on a voluntary leave of absence. Nothing was voluntary about it, but essentially I was pushed out of the company, which was very traumatic and painful because it was my baby. But that really changed the direction of my life. And I try to understand what led to this drive that I had and over-identification with the business, and that led to my burnout and lack of self-care because I was so focused on making the company successful and keeping my employees and investors happy.
Yeah.
And also trying to understand, was this spiritual awakening real, or was it a delusion, psychotic experience or something like that? So that's what led me to go back to school and discover this term called spiritual intelligence, which was first put forth by a woman called Dana Zohar. But
let me stop you real quick, because I want to go back with your story. You've given us so much detail. Okay. And first I'd like to say is depression kind of goes hand in hand when you're experiencing burnout, doesn't it? And I love how you described all of the things that you experienced on the table where this dissolved this ego piece, and you had this spiritual awakening, and then it went on to this sort of hyperactivity within your body and your mind that you couldn't really function. And then everything else around you is saying, wow, there's something not right here. And you're saying internally, there's something not right here. So how could I possibly act normal if I know that much is true? And so I just wanted to shed some light and go back to that, emphasize all of that experience that you had, because I think sometimes people in their minds, when they hear that others have had this spiritual awakening, they assume that it means life is in this blissful moment, right? And blissful ongoing experience. But that's not the case. It can be quite the opposite while your body and your soul try to realign and figure out how to function properly in this realm, right?
Yeah, thanks for highlighting all that. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort to integrate the insight. So I had a flash of insight, and I had the experience that my body was not separate from anything else. The floor I was looking at through the massage table was inside me. Everything is one field of consciousness, and there's no separation, etc., which is a classical awakening experience. But our mind used to thinking things in terms of objects that are in time and space and so on. And we need that perspective to function. And but it's known throughout the traditions, in yogic Hindu tradition, they speak of Kundalini awakening. And when someone has a Kundalini awakening, it can result in what's called a spiritual emergency, because that's distinct from a gradual spiritual emergence. So regardless of how it is, whether it's a spiritual emergency or whatever, we need to gradually integrate those insights into every aspect of our life and being. And that's ultimately actually what spiritual intelligence is. So it's not a momentary. People ask, what is spiritual intelligence? And it's not related to spiritual belief, whether I believe in God or, reincarnation. Those would be spiritual beliefs, and they might serve us and so on. And we can have a spiritual experience like I had, or we could be meditating and our ego dissolves, or walking in the forest and we feel one with nature. Those are important spiritual experiences. But spiritual intelligence, then how do we take those insights and live out in our daily life these qualities that have been celebrated as virtues for thousands of years throughout all the world's traditions? So when I, for my doctoral research, interviewed 71 teachers across all the world's traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, shamanism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc., they spoke of the same virtues, regardless of their cosmology theology, whether they believed Moses went to the mountain and received the Torah from God, or Jesus is the Messiah, or Muhammad was the final prophet, or whatever it is, or they speak of Shiva Shakti. But they all speak of living a life of purpose and service trust, gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, humility, integrity, and those are the virtues. And then so it's embodying those qualities, drawing on these spiritual resources in daily life. When we're driving on the freeway and people are trying to cut us off and get on and off the ramp, do I feel like I'm this separate entity boxed in this metal box? Or, if I'm in a team meeting at work, is my ego driving me and I want to prove myself right versus trying to do what is right? So it's taking this understanding of our interconnectedness and our true nature and connecting to our essence, and then embodying that realization in daily life in a way that helps us individually and helps us collectively. Now, just want to highlight one other thing that you said about life and spirit. You said, I forget how you said it, but something like we are spiritual beings. We have spirit like we have skin. Now, when you think about what is the root of spirit, it's the animating breath of life from Latin. So essentially, spirit is our life force. So we all have a life force, and we'll colloquially talk to each other. Well, how's your spirit this week? How's your life force? How's your vitality? So, it doesn't have to be so woo-woo. And people can embody and develop spiritual intelligence regardless of where they are on the spectrum, from devout religious person to someone who's quote unquote spiritual but not religious, or agnostic, or devout atheist. And, I've worked with over 100 CEOs and they've spanned the full range. But regardless, they can embody these qualities. They can find their purpose. They can find their calling. They can express gratitude. They can express compassion, live in presence, and humility and integrity. So you don't have to be spiritual. I just wrote a blog on Psychology Today called Spiritual Intelligence for the Non-Spiritual. And the point is that you don't have to identify as spiritual to be spiritually intelligent, at least in some dimensions of it. Like any intelligence, it's multifactorial. So there are many muscle groups in our body, and there's many qualities that comprise of spiritual intelligence. And so it's a practice to develop and cultivate and embody these qualities in daily living. It's an ongoing journey for all of us, certainly for me.
Well, when you say that it's a practice and ongoing, it reminds me when you use the example of driving every day, right? And you've got people cutting you off and honking. I used to have a little reminder sitting on my dash, and I called him Buddha Cat. Buddha Cat was just this little figurine, which was exactly that. It was a cat shaped like a Buddha in the dress and all, and had its eyes closed and its palms together. And it was just that tiny little reminder to myself to just be calm. And I think that is what can aid us in that journey of those tiny little reminders of the practice of continuously doing it. It's not an end all. We all know that no matter how far we keep going, enlightenment really just gives you more of something else to be enlightened about, right? When we live in this aspect of infinite possibilities, well, there's infinite levels and layers, right? And so we find that more and more, that it just is a never-ending sort of experience. But that's the greatness of it, is that we get to keep creating ourselves to be the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, it's limitless growth, potential, and creativity, and self-actualization, which is delightful. And I love your little example with this while driving. So this little reminder that brought you to calmness inside helped you, reduce your stress while you're driving. And I assume in doing that, you're also a more kind driver on the road and less reactive, etc. So that very thing that is a win-win. It's a win-win for us individually when we find and embody those qualities, and it's a win-win for us collectively. And it's so important in this world right now with so much polarization, and there's so much going on, skyrocketing rates of depression and anxiety and substance abuse and suicide rates. And there's a loneliness epidemic, despite all the connectivity we have on social media and text and all these things. But people are fundamentally lonely because we have this delusion of separation. But when we connect and dive into our depth, into our life force, we discover that we share the same life force with everybody else. And that brings us to remember. So if you parse it, it's remember. So that's how we become members in this web of life. And that gives us a sense of belonging. And then through our purpose, our calling, we naturally want to share our gifts to help others in this web of life. And that gives us a sense of fulfillment and meaning and a sense of belonging, which is so important for our well-being and enabling us to contribute to the wellness of the whole. We're just like the cell in this multicellular, multi-organ organism. And we each have our gift. We have our unique self. Like each cell in the body has a membrane that has to keep its integrity and has its immune systems, etc. So the cell is alive, but it has a particular role within the context of the organ, whether it's in the thyroid or in our kidney or in our heart or in our brain. They're all different, but they come from the same stem cells, from the same DNA, but they differentiate and take their unique role. And they have to keep their well-being, but they have to do their role to take care of the whole. Because when the body is sick or something happens, God forbid, we get cancer, then that individual cell is going to ultimately wither away and die with the whole organism. So we have this dual thing that we have to take care of ourselves individually, but also embed ourselves and think about the wellness of the overall web of life we're part of, the overall community we're part of, the overall organization we're a part of. So in the corporate world, we're part of a department, a team, and that's part of a division, and so on. But so we have to take care of our individual selves, and we have to take care of and make our unique contribution for the organ and for the overall organism.
Absolutely. Now, you have ventured on this journey to really understand what that is like, and you yourself had to do it first and foremost. And so when we get back from this brief commercial, we're going to discuss exactly what that was like for you, what you experienced, what worked, what didn't work, and why you share what did work with others today. So stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with Dr. Yosi Amram on spiritual intelligent leadership. Now, you have shared with us so much information on us as a collective, as a whole, but also coming back to that individual piece and responsibility in all that, and how when we start to do that, it emanates all of those frequencies to others outside of us. And that's that beautiful reciprocity feature of us as a collective. Now, can you share with us, what was that like for you, your experience of understanding this?
Yeah, so you said some key points about, responsibility. So I was just doing a webinar, free event on Friday on freedom, and the notion of taking responsibility and telling ourselves, and I tell my clients, you are not your fault, but you are your responsibility. So, freedom implies responsibility, and we are each responsible for ourselves. So part of our path and my path to wellness was to understand why I was so driven with my company and was so identified with it, and that led to my burnout. So I had to look at my history, but not get trapped in understanding the history. It was important to understand what led to that so I can let go of that, and then focus on what my calling and my purpose was. And as I was doing this research around spiritual intelligence, it became clear that everything in my life really led me to this point. And we live life forward, but it makes sense only looking back. And then I can look back through all my experiences from the leadership, military, and the education and engineering and business and starting companies, and then discovering this thing of spiritual intelligence, and then wanting to bring that to the world and help other founders and CEOs who are facing this loneliness at the top to embrace this framework and cultivate their spiritually intelligent leadership. So that kind of became my purpose, and things lined up. My past, even my wounds and this trauma that I faced and being pushed out of the company became a sacred wound, because it made me more empathic to understand some of the crises that my clients face, or some of their issues when they work with their boards or their team or what have you. So, things started to make sense, and there was a sense of purpose. The other core practice for me was really this thing of gratitude, which I recommend to all my clients. There's so much research now about the benefits of the attitude of gratitude. And then every day I wake up, first thing, I have a gratitude practice. Last thing, when I get in bed, I review my day and I have a gratitude practice. And that just resources me, and I feel my body relax, my spirit expands. And so once I had that sense of purpose, a practice of gratitude, also this understanding of our interconnectedness and interdependence, then, I started practicing and working on these other qualities of spiritual intelligence, like compassion and joy and presence. Presence is so critical these days because we're bombarded by so many things competing for our attention. And as a manager, as a business executive, as a human being, we're interacting with other people. It could be with our partner, with our friends, with our children, at the dinner table, whatever it is. But, our minds, we have these monkey minds that are running off, and we're processing what happened yesterday, what we're planning to do tomorrow, what I'm going to have for lunch today. But, right now I'm here with you, and the greatest gift we can give ourselves and each other is our presence in the moment, the present of our presence, because this is life. What's happening right now is life. So how do we cultivate presence? So I started meditating, because that is, trains our mind to do two things. One is to have clarity of intention, which is so critical in every interaction, whether I'm a salesperson or I'm a parent or I'm a partner, at the family dinner. I have to think of, what is my intention for this moment, for this interaction with this person? So I have to be clear on my purpose, my intention, and I have to manage my attention. So in meditation, we kind of practice that. We pick up an object, whether it's our breath or whatever it is, and we're focusing on that. So we have a clarity of intention, and then our minds naturally drift. So we manage our intention. We build the muscle of focus and returning without judgment. So that trains our mind and our consciousness like a muscle to be focused on our intention and manage our attention. So I'm just throwing out a few of the qualities and the practices that I engage in to cultivate that. And and then practice that. Because when we're with someone and we feel their mind is elsewhere, we lose interest. And as a manager, as an executive, as a partner, and in a romantic relationship or otherwise, the quality of the interaction and the connection and the depth and the trust is so much better when we're present, because we're giving that person the respect. This is the greatest gift we have. It's the non-renewable resource of this moment that's going to be gone. And if I don't pay attention to you now, or I'm not present to this moment and feel our connection, it's gone for me, it's gone for you. And it's just a shame.
You lose trust in somebody, and like you said, you become disinterested, disengaged, lose that trust, and you don't even try anymore. And so absolutely, that's essential for business and all of your personal. So really learning how to hone in on this. And like you mentioned, it's a daily practice. It's a continuous, and definitely meditation is absolutely how you really come to understand how to calm yourself enough to be able to get to that point to begin with, right? And again, it needs to be continued on, because it's easy to become complacent or just familiar with the people that you're around all the time, and or comfortable, right? And you forget about all that, and it all goes out the window. But it's a dangerous zone, that is, isn't it? Because you don't want to lose them forever, right? You don't want to lose that trust, etc. And so something I want to bring to the forefront that I thought was very important, this key element, was something that you said in the beginning, and now I can't remember, so forget about it. That went out the window. Here I am not being fully present in the memory. But I just love that you have brought that to us, all the things that you do on a daily basis, because it's something to continue.
Yeah, and as you said, it's building trust and the quality of the interactions. And my book and my work has been around leadership, but it's also, I work a lot with couples, and I'm doing some research now on spiritually intelligent relationships, which is bringing the same qualities into our primary relationships, which is also so important. And, it's that presence that we can look at our partner in a fresh way. And otherwise, we're just projecting. We think we know them, and we stop listening, and they just we have these projections on who that person is. And it loses the freshness and loses the vibrancy, and, and then the passion dies, and, we're just living parallel lives. And I see that in so many couples. They come in, they're like, oh, we've been together for a long time, and the passion has gone out. We have our habitual ways of being, but, we're just feel alienated. And we could be in a relationship in the same house, in the same home, sharing a bed, and we still feel lonely, because we don't really know and understand the depth of what motivates our partner and what's moving through their heart, and so on. So, but nobody's going to vulnerably share what is weighing on them and the deepest part of their thing if they think that the person across from them, sitting with them, is not listening, is not taking it in, is not empathically attuned, is not compassionate. So we just close down, and then there's this distance. Even though we're together, we feel lonely, and we feel like our partner doesn't know us. And so then we seek that excitement and whatever with fresh new relationships. And so it's I'm just trying to highlight that these same qualities that apply in leadership apply in our primary relationships, apply in our families. And
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it truly is so easy to fall off on that, even with good intentions. You just, so it's that continuous practice again. And so thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to something that you mentioned at the beginning of spiritual intellect, SI. And you
Spiritual
mentioned
intelligence.
intelligence. Yes, thank you. You mentioned that it wasn't just you that came up with this, that there was somebody else that really brought this into with a book that they had written. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, the term spiritual intelligence was coined when I first heard it by a woman called Dana Zohar, and her book was called Rewiring the Corporate Brain. And she came up with this concept of spiritual intelligence, SQ, as she called it. But, when I got interested in it, because I knew about emotional intelligence through all my work in leadership as a CEO and then starting to coach other CEOs, I knew the importance of emotional intelligence and all the research that was done around it. And the reason it really caught on, the concepts of emotional intelligence were put forth by two academicians, Salovey and Meyer, in academic paper in 1990. Until then, there was a dichotomy between emotion and reason. And if I asked you, April, do you know people in your life that are emotional? You might think of some. It's not going to be necessarily the highest compliment. But, then there's the emotionally intelligent, which is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information. So I knew about emotional intelligence and all the research done and popularized by Daniel Goleman and others. And I was like, oh, I hear of spiritual intelligence. I'd love to research it. But in order to research something, you have to measure it. And scientifically, and that was the path I set on. I was like, I needed to define it more specifically than just talk about it in broad terms, and then how to measure it. So I did all these 71 interviews with all these spiritual teachers across the traditions to identify these qualities. And from that, I developed the first academically validated measure of spiritual intelligence that showed that it complements emotional intelligence. So I studied 42 CEOs and 210 members of their staff. And what I found is that leaders that scored higher on spiritual intelligence led teams with higher morale, greater commitment, lower turnover, even when you control for emotional intelligence. So if I can talk dirty for a moment, nerdy, emotional intelligence accounted for 41% of the variance in the outcome of effective leadership. Spiritual intelligence accounted for 46% of the variance, and together they accounted for 67%. So what that means, without getting caught into the science and the statistics, is that they each have a contribution on their own, but together they have a multiplicative effect. And since then, there's been other research that's been done by other researchers that have shown that people who score higher on spiritual intelligence lead more satisfying life, better quality of life, are more productive, they have more resilience, they have better quality relationships. And some research has even shown that leaders with higher spiritual intelligence produce better financial results for their organizations. Something that hasn't been shown for emotional intelligence. So this is not to knock down emotional intelligence. Clearly a lot of research and importance, but I'm just saying that it's as powerful or more powerful than emotional intelligence. And this research is now done across many countries and cultures and different contexts. So by many researchers worldwide. So this is really exciting for me to see that, this pioneering work I started now it's about 20 years ago is now really getting a lot of momentum. And my hope that in 10, 20 years, SI and spiritual intelligence will be as broadly understood as emotional intelligence has made it into the zeitgeist of the mainstream. And I think it's so crucial right now for humanity, where we're standing in our individual well-being and our collective well-being, because we understand IQ and cognitive intelligence that landed us on the moon. We split the atom, we deciphered the genome, we now have AI that is smarter, more intelligent than many of us, including myself. And then we have EQ and emotional intelligence. We can tune into our emotions and regulate them better. But, there's all these problems. And I think the key missing link is this thing for spiritual intelligence. So I hope that more of us understand it's important and cultivate it for our benefit and lead in lives that is more inspired, more empowered, and connected. And it's good for ourselves, and it's good for the people around us.
That's right. Ah, wow, beautifully said. So much of what you've done, it's very apparent that you've done extensive research and really lived this life of wanting to understand ourselves spiritually and be able to cultivate that within our lives and sharing that with others. I really loved the piece of where you mentioned that you look back on your past, but you don't stay there. But it's essential to understand your past in order to know that that experience was meant to be so you could show up exactly how you need to in order to live out that thing that you came here for, right? That purpose, that passion, that drive, and so all of those things. And it's not easy to do that in the beginning. Of course, we think how it's impossible for that traumatic event to be a good thing in my life, but yet when you start going a little bit deeper to ask all of the questions of this is why and why would that be, etc., and go deeper and deeper, you have a clear understanding of why it might be essential for you today. Dr. Yosi, it's been amazing having you on the show. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Well, I just to build on what you said, it's in the beginning, it's not so easy to get going, but once we get this thing going, we get this flywheel of inspiration and motivation and depth that fuels our passion and our aliveness to keep going. And normally we think of kind of everything in the universe and life as being limited, and it's a zero-sum game kind of thing. We think I have $100 in my pocket, I give someone $1, I have 99, I have less left, so I gotta keep going, hoarding what I have and guard it, etc. But one of the most fulfilling things in life is this quality of love. And when I have a certain amount of love and joy in my heart, if I share some of that love, some of that joy with someone else, do I have less love or joy in my heart? No, it expands my capacity. It's joyful. It's lovely to share love, to share joy. So it becomes a perpetual motion machine that violates the laws of physics that says, you always are going to lose energy. No, if you share your love and your joy, you get more love, more joy, and then you get more inspired and inspires everybody around you. So when we get on that wave, life becomes a fulfilling, joyful adventure. Our well-being and the well-being of those around us just prospers and expands. And so
Yeah. I think that a good message is you'll get there. Just keep going. You'll get there because it does exactly that. That's that reciprocity, right? When you give, it gives the world, the universe, whatever you want to call it. It certainly happens, and to just keep going.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes we get it back from the person we gave it to, but sometimes we don't know how it pays back. But my point is that just it feels good for us and enlivens and brings more joy and love into ourselves. And chances are, our partners, our friends, our coworkers will reciprocate and mirror back that love and joy and gratitude. So it just creates a positive feedback loop within ourselves and people around us.
And that makes perfect sense why you begin your day with gratitude, because it's impossible to feel otherwise, right? And that goes back to all the research that you mentioned that we have done on gratitude, is that you can't feel sad or mad or angry or any of that if you're experiencing gratitude. And so it just sets your day off perfectly. So thank you for sharing that with our audience. I want to make sure everyone knows where to find you. We've had it displayed here on the screen for those of you viewing. For those of you listening in, yosiamram.net, N-E-T. It's in the description below. So please check out his work and all of the things. I know, Dr. Yosi, you mentioned that you've done some classes and all of those things. And I love that you're continuing research in other things like couples and moving on to different areas and aspects of our lives. And yeah, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Yeah, and for those who can't remember how to spell Yosi Amram and you're just listening, another way to connect with me is go to Awakening SI. SI is short for spiritual intelligence. AwakeningSI.org is a nonprofit I have that hosts these free events for cultivating these qualities of SI. And from there, you can find out a lot more. So yosiamram.net or awakeningsi.org.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because saying that we're not spiritual is like saying that we don't have skin. So thank you so much. Goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.